Okay. My hype squad down here. I always deputize them every year. So my name is Heather Crawford. I work at, guess where? Bloomberg. I'm going to talk to you about the Pythonic ideal in the age of generative AI. Can we just give it up for the clickbaitiest title of the whole conference? All right. So first thing I want everybody to do, put your thumbs up like this and do a few exercises. Okay? You're going to need your thumbs during this presentation. So a little bit about me. I am an engineering technical trainer at Bloomberg. I've been there about 4.5 years. Before that, I was a computer science professor. So teaching is in my blood. It's in my heart. And I have a lot of experience with it. So we're going to talk about learning and teaching programming languages, specifically Python, but kind of, sort of, not really. I have been a Python user since 2007, but I only really started leveling up and kind of getting what this really meant when I joined Bloomberg, because I had to use it differently than I did before. And I'm an AI newbie. Now, what do I mean by that? I've used AI code generators a little bit. I have my thoughts. Some of them you're going to hear today. I don't know that I would call myself an expert, but I'm going to give you my best advice as we move through the day today. So my goal here is really to dispel the hype of AI and give you some actual tips and tricks of how you, as a developer, can use AI as you're learning a new language, but also as a teacher. Okay, I support their use in coding and in learning to code, but you have to be careful. I want to offer opinions on 2 questions. Okay, the first is AI going to take my job? So we're going to get to that. And the second is it still valuable to learn how to write truly Pythonic, idiomatic, beautiful code? Okay, so we're going to get into all of that. So let's do a few definitions first. The first one is AI, short for artificial intelligence. When I was searching for this online, I got a lot. I got an AI summary of what AI is, which is very meta. Okay, but one of the definitions said this: the theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence. What? Intelligence? No, I'm not buying it. Okay, the second one was technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving. I don't buy it even more, especially learning, because the way that an AI learns is by looking at a whole bunch of old stuff and pretending that what it pops out to you is new stuff. Okay, so I don't believe either one. Now, LLMs, large language models, are a type of AI that is really good at generating text. Okay, so this means that it's really good at generating your documentation. It's really good on doing AI summaries of itself. Okay, and sort of, it can generate code, which is really a coding assistant. Okay, so a coding assistant is an LLM that has been trained on code and pops out code due to prompts. And really, they are instances of each other. Okay, so a coding assistant is an LLM, is an AI. Now, because of that, I'm going to probably mix up these terms. I really am talking about coding assistants in this talk, but I'll probably say AI a lot because it's easier to say. So, coding assistants. There are lots of examples of these. I'm not going to focus on any specific one, but some examples include things like Tab9, Amazon Code Whisperer, GitHub Copilot. Who has used an AI coding assistant? Anyone? Who liked it? Yeah. Okay, so that sort of gets into half my talk. I guess I said generative AI. So there are 2 types of AI, predictive AI and generative AI. Predictive AI is good at, guess what? Predicting stuff. So if you wanted to know whether the weather was going to be good in Austin during PyTexas, you could train a predictive AI on a whole bunch of historical weather data and get an answer. Generative AI supposedly generates, watch my scare quotes, new stuff, but it gets trained on something, and thus it can only really produce what it's been trained on. Okay, so new is kind of not really true. So the rest of my talk, or my title is the Pythonic ideal, which is a play on words of the Platonic ideal. And the Platonic, I'm never going to get these words right. The Platonic ideal is that this idea of these perfect eternal forms that exist outside the physical world. And I'm a mathematician, okay, and a computer scientist. And so perfect squares are my ideal example of this, okay, where we create an integer by squaring a different integer. The Pythonic ideal, if you've ever typed import this at the Python REPL, you get the Zen of Python. Now, here's the thing. When you ask anybody in this room, what does Pythonic mean? You're going to get a different answer. This is my version. Okay, so the things I want to focus on here are beautiful is better than ugly. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Okay, explicit is better than implicit. Complex is better than complicated. And finally, readability counts. All of these are hugely important in creating code that is beautiful and Pythonic, but those are the ones I want you to keep in your head. Now, the last definitions that I have to do for you all are what I consider a beginner and what I consider to be an experienced person when it comes to learning Python. Okay, so a beginner, new to programming, maybe Python is their first language. They don't have a lot of experience to draw on. Okay, an experienced person is not defined by duration in a role. You tell me you've been writing code for 20 years, cool. But you may or may not be an experienced developer at that point. Okay, what makes you experienced is the breadth and depth of the experiences that you've had, the problems you've had to solve, the languages you've had to learn, the pros and cons of those languages, because languages are tools in a toolbox. If you define yourself as a X programmer, Python, C++, TypeScript, whatever, I encourage you to just back away from that and just see them as tools. So let's talk about pros and cons for beginners. So get your thumbs ready. What I'm going to do is on each of the following slides, I'm going to put a phrase, okay? And you're going to give me a thumbs up if you think it's a pro, a thumbs down if you think it's a con, and okay, thumbs sideways if you can't decide or you're not sure. Everybody ready? Okay. So for beginners, coding assistants can write code fast. Okay, I'm seeing a range, okay? For a beginner, I think it's a big con, okay? I think it's a big con because it writes that code fast, and maybe that beginner cuts and pastes it into some sort of REPL or some program, and they run it, and they go, cool, it does a thing. It does what it's supposed to. Done, right? No, because they haven't done the work to understand the code. They will not grow into an experienced developer without spending time understanding that code. Okay, so I think writing code fast for a beginner is a big con. Okay, next one. Coding assistants can write code beyond the skills of the developer. Pro, con. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs down. Absolutely, but kind of not. Okay, so it's a pro because the way that we grow is by seeing stuff that we hadn't considered before. Remember I told you that I started to really level up as a Python developer when I came to Bloomberg? It's because before, in academia, I wrote my code, other people wrote their code, and I didn't look at other people's code much. Bloomberg forced me to look at other people's code and also teach things I had never heard of before, like generators and list comprehensions. And I realized that I wasn't experienced yet. But it can also be a con for the same reason as before. Okay, and this is because you still have to read and understand the code before it's going to really help build your experience. Ready for the next one? Coding assistants can explain code. So pro or con, I think it's a pro, okay? It can explain code, but there's a tiny little con, tiny enough that I don't have a red X for it. Okay, and that tiny con is that, did you know AI can hallucinate? And if it can hallucinate code, it can hallucinate explanations. Okay, so you have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. And if something doesn't feel right, ask a friend, ask a more experienced person, ask even Stack Overflow, which is dangerous. Okay, coding assistants can find bugs. Pro, con, neutral. I'm seeing a range. I'm seeing some that kind of look like they're sideways. I think it's a pro-ish because it can find bugs, but guess what? My experience with it finding bugs is it finds the one that I go, duh. Now, maybe it's because I'm not a beginner, okay? But, and I'm looking at Pandy now, you ready? Do not use AI to find bugs in place of doing testing, okay? Do not. Okay, next one. Coding assistants can hallucinate. Pro or con? I mean, really? Absolutely a con for a beginner because they don't know any better. Okay? I could sit here as an experienced developer and lie to all the juniors that I teach, and they would probably believe it, but not for very long. Okay? Not until they got experience. By the way, I wouldn't do that. Okay, next one. Ready? Vibe coding. Pro or con? Oliver. For a beginner, if you don't know what vibe coding is, it's basically telling as a prompt to an AI what you want it to create, and it creates it. And the actual developer never writes code. They just keep on adding prompts until they get what they want out of it. Okay, this is a con. I'm sorry, all of you who had your thumbs up, con, big con, huge con. Don't do it. Now, if you're just doing a proof of concept, if you're doing a weekend project, if you're doing something that will never be used by another human being, vibe code all you want, okay? But not for production code. So let's move on to experienced developers. And what you're gonna see is that I am going to give the same pros and cons, but we're going to vote again, okay? And see how it differs from the beginners, if at all. Okay, so coding assistants can write code fast. Pro or con? I'm gonna say pro, but I'm going to add something new to it, okay? It can write boilerplate code fast, okay? The good stuff, what I'm gonna call the brain surgery code, okay, no. Then you're back to being a beginner because that's new to you. And you need to not let AI do that. You need to do that yourself. Okay, so if you're writing boilerplate code with it, fantastic. It can write code fast. If I write yet another database connection function in my life, I will cry. AI is going to do that. All right, coding assistants can write code beyond the skill of the developer. I'm seeing some cons. I'm seeing a couple of pros. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say still both. Okay? Why? Because I think growing as an experienced developer actually gets a little bit harder because you need to see new stuff all the time. And there's always going to be new stuff, but sometimes the places that you find it get fewer and farther between. If that's happening to you, is AI gonna fix it? No. Go join an open source project or something to experience things that perhaps are new. Okay, but you still are responsible for taking that brand new code and reading it and understanding it. Okay, and so that's where the con part comes in. So coding assistants can explain code. What do we think? You know what? I think this is good, especially for people like maybe you are a contractor who works alone most of the time, and it would be really helpful to you to have a rubber ducky that talks back. And that's kind of what AI does. Okay, so I think it definitely can be good, but don't forget that little tiny red dot of the con, which is it can still hallucinate. Okay, so be careful. So coding assistants can find bugs for experienced developers. What do you think? Okay, I'm seeing a range. I like this. I think it's kind of both again. Poor Carol, she's like, Heather, pick a side. Look, it can find the bugs that I probably look at and go, oh, look, and off by one error again. Okay, but it can't find the really hard ones, the really complicated ones, the edge cases. And that's what experienced developers probably need help with. Okay, Coding assistants can hallucinate. This is still bad, but not as bad as for a junior because we're more experienced. We have better understanding of what we've seen before and when it's lying. I had a colleague at work actually ask, "Are you hallucinating right now?" And it went into this very long explanation of how it wasn't hallucinating. It absolutely was. Okay. All right, I'm not even going to ask you. Vibe coding is still bad. This bad. Bad, bad. Don't do it. So I have a couple of new ones for experienced developers now. So what do you think? It can be a viable pair programmer for solo developers. I think that's good. If you do a lot of stuff on your own, if you don't like people, I don't know, okay, it can help. Okay, so that can be good. Now here's a big one. Ethical issues with AI-generated code. What type of ethical issues? Sometimes the code that code assistants are trained on is not licensed to be used in other places without attribution. And guess what? AI don't care. Okay, and you as the developer absolutely have to care. So it's a big con. So be very careful with the code that you create using AI and how you use it. Because I looked into this a little bit. I started spiraling down this deep well, which is usually indicative of a new talk I should consider. And I realized that they say, oh, we get our code from public sources, but they don't define what they are. Did you do a web scrape? Did you look at GitHub repos? Because there's usually licenses with those. Okay, so freely available on the internet does not mean public. Okay, so be very careful with the code that you're creating. So now let's shift into some tips. We're going to start with beginners. So if you are a beginner of any language, but especially Python, use AI to explore. Okay, so my advice to my students, because we get them using AI pretty early, okay, is explore. Write the code yourself first. When you get stuck, ask AI for help. Okay? Maybe ask it for alternatives. Do the work as a beginner to understand AI-generated code. All of it, every part of it. If you are cutting and pasting and going, cool, it works, stop now. Do yourself a favor. Future you will thank past you for that. Now, this is the biggest tip that I have ever given in my entire life. For a beginner, get stuck, struggle with it. Find hard stuff, get yourself unstuck. And maybe you use AI to help you get unstuck. Maybe you use seniors, maybe you use, not senior citizens, experienced developers, okay, but maybe them too, okay? This is how you're going to get better. And when you get better, you grow into an experienced developer, not by sitting there hacking out boring code for 10 years. Okay, so get stuck, unstuck, and then better. For experienced developers, please let AI write the boring boilerplate stuff. We need your experience to solve the brain surgery problems, because all of these tools throughout history that were supposed to replace us as developers, AI being the latest one, have just changed our job, right? And let us solve problems that we didn't think we could solve before. Okay, so let AI write the boilerplate stuff. But also ask AI for stuff you don't know about. And how do you do that? Here's a prompt for you. Say, give me some options for X, whatever problem you want. And it will give you probably 3, 4, 5, 10 options. I guarantee at least one of them in there is something you haven't seen before that will make you go, huh. Okay, so prompt differently for it. If you're working on, say, an open source project and you want your code to look consistent with everybody else's, use AI for that. Okay, so things like variable naming conventions and how they do their import statements, whether or not they use list comprehensions. And by the way, the answer to that is sometimes, but not always. Okay, now for the experience, this is probably the biggest piece of advice that I can give. Okay, use your experience to transform both yourself and the code you write, okay? To evolve the problems that you solve, to put things together in ways they were never meant to be put together, because that is going to produce innovation. And that innovation is going to benefit all of us, okay? Now for teachers, do not ignore AI. Use it from the beginning, okay? Especially as a university professor, it is super tempting for me to say, that's it, just don't use it, okay? Use it during lectures. Demonstrate how to use AI well to your students. Now, I'm going to leave you with the answers to these questions. Will AI replace me? And the answer is maybe. But not for the reasons you might think. Okay, so you might think, look, AI can do it better, faster, cheaper. Okay, forget about all of that. Okay, it will replace you if you refuse to evolve with it. If you say to yourself, I haven't ever needed it before, therefore I don't need it now. Okay, so use it. It's a tool that is going to make you better so that you can think about the brain surgery problems instead of boring boilerplate code. So the next question I promised I would answer is it still worth learning Pythonic code? Okay, to write beautiful code, readable code. And the answer is maybe, again, but also not for the reasons you might assume. Okay, now you might be saying to yourself, well, the reason that I assume that it's good to write or that I shouldn't be writing boilerplate code is that AI can write a better quality code. It can write code that is more easily tested, and that is untrue. It can only write what it's already seen, okay? And we haven't yet stopped innovating and telling it what we can do, okay? So Pythonic code is maintainable, it's readable, it's understandable. It helps other people grow, including past or future you who looks back and goes, what was I doing? What happened here? So here's some takeaways for you. So LLMs, AI, are nothing more than fancy autocomplete. Okay, so don't assume that they are anything more than that and you'll be on the right plane. But if you over-rely on AI, you're going to run the risk of not gaining the experience to become senior. And if we do this too frequently and too often, we're going to run out of seniors. And that is going to be worse for all of us because we can't do the brain surgery code. So remember, AI is a tool, nothing more. That's it. So a little bit of advice for the future, don't panic. It's okay. Anybody got a towel with them? Okay. Learn your craft. It's not wasted time. Okay. Get stuck, get unstuck, and get better. Embrace AI, but be wary. Remember, it hallucinates. It will lie about hallucinating. Ask it. Teach the next generation. Help build those experienced developers. But my friends, please keep it Pythonic. Okay? And that's all I have for you today. I am more than happy to take your questions.